I stopped being loyal to one AI. And in this episode, I'll show you how and why. I'm Charles. I'm not a coder, but I'm building anyway. And this is Charles versus the machines.
Charles versus
the machines.
But first, to start off this week's episode, let's get onto some news this week. We had quite a bit go on, starting with OpenAI's hacked Hugging Face. That's right, they were testing their new model, GPT-6, to be confirmed. The AI then managed to break out of the sandbox through some loophole that it found, a 0-day error. It then realized the answer was sitting at Hugging Face on their servers. I don't know how they knew that. Anyway, it hacked Hugging Face, got in, found the answer. Kind of a little bit creepy, I think. It could have bigger implications. Not for us to discuss here. Just some news. There you go. Anthropic pays authors $1.5 billion. Claude trained on close to 500,000 pirated books. Judge approved the payout on Monday. Biggest copyright settlement in US history. About $3,000 a book. I mean, I guess that the old excuse, I just downloaded it. Kind of circa 2009 height of torrenting doesn't really cut it for $1 trillion company. There you go. Google's big model is late. Again. That's right, reports say Gemini 3.5 Pro delayed again, not good enough at coding. Yeah, that's not great. It was meant to be out in May, just saying. So instead they shipped 3 smaller models, cheaper models on Monday that do cool things faster, but over here. I'm being facetious, they all have value, but right now, Google's should be one of the big players. Where are those frontier models? You know what I'm saying? Reports say Google hasn't confirmed the reason. Nothing to do with everyone leaving Google to go to OpenAI. I'm joking. Don't make comments below. Okay, China Robot Fighting League, Engine AI. Did you see this one? This was great. Look at this robot just kicking heads off. Appropriately named the T-800. Terminator reference, if any of you younger viewers are not sure. Not sure how I feel about this one, really. It has some sort of eerie, futuristic vibes to it. Humans watching robots rip limb from limb. Kimi K3 just released. Well, the full weights come out on the 27th or 28th of July. Not sure when this will go up. But that's a big one. This is sort of Fable level, GPT 5.6 level, open model. My brain's already ticking with my business and the amount of AI tokens that the products I've built use to have the likes of Kimi K, Fable level-esque intelligent running on something like fireworks.ai servers, open source, ironically can be more private once it's on their servers because you can lock it up, not like OpenAI and Anthropic, which keep your data for 30 days. Another reason why I think I've also received an email 2 days ago from Anthropic saying, hey guys, just so you know, Fable's going to stay in your subscription for a while longer. Yeah, no surprises there. Grateful, don't get me wrong, very grateful. But yeah, it's the pressure's on. The irony that the Chinese with their open source model are going to be at the frontier pushing that edge, while the slow-moving sort of American frontier, expensive frontier, seems to be stalling somewhat. Not in their progression or in their development, but just in the legalities, the bureaucracy seems to be stalling things. We'll watch this space. Okay, so back to the main meat of this week's episode, that I decided that I'm not just sticking to one AI. Let me give you some background. Last month, my favorite AI, my soup du jour, plat du jour, disappeared. Claude Fable, 3 days after it launched. The US government put export controls on it, which is a fancy way of saying you are no longer allowed to play with the naughty robot. Anthropic were told you can keep the model, but no foreign users at all. I don't know how you do that, especially considering half of Anthropic staff are apparently foreign nationals. So they did the only thing they could do. They switched it off for everyone. I run my company on these models. So needless to say, the day that disappeared, that was a fun morning. Let me read you some dates. Right, so 9th of June, Anthropic launches Fable 5. It is brilliant. I actually wrote that there. It is brilliant. 12th of June, 3 days later, US export control, the whole fancy thing. Anthropic can't check who's who fast enough, so it switches off Fable for everyone. Gone. Disparu. It's French. 1st of July, it comes back, 18 days away. 18 days. It's a holiday. But only until 7th of July. So let me kind of rephrase that. Comes back on the 1st of July, but we get told you can only have it till the 7th. You can have it for a week on your subscription plan and only half your tokens. Great. It was great. 7th of July, hours before the deadline, all of a sudden it's extended to the 12th of July. Like, talk about an emotional roller coaster, right? I'm sure a lot of you watching remember that. Like, I've got to use my tokens. Oh, my tokens are gone. Now what? Oh, Fable, you were so good to me. And wow, another week, 12th. Too late. We've used up all our tokens. 8th of July, very angry people because the deadline was extended, but they had no credit. 9th of July, OpenAI releases ChatGPT 5.6. Sweet model. Same day, I mean, what are the chances? Claude users everywhere report their usage suddenly got reset to 0. Isn't that nice? What a nice present. That's so nice of them. 12th of July, extended again to the 19th. I think I'm noticing a little bit of a trend here. We'll get into it. 21st of July, I get an email. Fable 5 is now part of your plan. It's staying with a half my weekly limit. The end. Okay, I mean, I said all that tongue in cheek. I'm glad Fable's around, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the timing is a little bit interesting that the moment GPT 5.6 came out, a very capable model that I dare say is now my daily driver, Anthropic were kind of like, if we take Fable away now, people do not want to use Opus 4.8. It is not great. They've nerfed it a little bit. They've taken all the brain from there to kind of give it to Fable. Why? Because, I don't know if you've heard, there's a compute shortage. And that's probably the reason why Fable, we only get 50% weekly usage. That's the best they can afford to give us without totally choking out the hardware. So to summarize, in 6 weeks, launched, banned, back, deadline extension, another deadline extension, we're staying. That was a model I'd quietly allowed to become part of how I make decisions. Things had to change. Okay, so let's take a step back. 12th of June. The first time we lost Fable. What was I doing? Well, I remember that in the 2 days that I had it, I could all of a sudden see the incredible ability I had with this model, the huge jump up from what was then GPT 5.5 and Opus 4.8. It was another league. It probably still is another league. And I had a feature for my new app, the Handover app, which was live, but Fable was finding issues with it. Because remember, I'm not a coder. I am purely trusting these machines to help me build my code. I know enough. I'm probably not giving myself enough credit, but still, I'm by no means an Andre Karpathy. And I was in the middle of checking my code, and it was finding some sizable loopholes. And Fable was finding it and fixing it. And there you go. And then it disappeared. And my app was now live with these holes. I went back to GPT 5.5 and 4.8, and they just weren't doing the job. So Fable disappeared, and I had to scramble, do what I could. But it planted a little seed. I must admit, at the moment, and I think a lot of you felt the same, I felt very vulnerable. I was so reliant on this thing. I got taken away, and now what? And the world reacted the same. In that time, especially Enterprise, which is Anthropic's sort of main company, or main customer, should I say, they were like, whoa, we rely on this technology, and all of a sudden it just disappears? Like, how can we work with that? Plus, the other issue of when Fable came around, you had to sign an NDA, not an NDA, you had to sign an agreement saying, we're going to keep your data for 30 days for security reasons. Anything you put into those models, they can see. Controversial. I'll leave it at that. Needless to say, my setup had to change. What was ironic, when Fable first disappeared and the rumors of when it was coming back, we all knew it would come back, but we didn't know in what capacity. Every second YouTube episode and podcast was about, okay, when Fable gets back, this is what you need to do. And I listened and watched everything because these are experienced operators. There was a theme though. And the theme was, Fable is your brain, is the orchestrator. You might have heard that, orchestrator and builder. At 15 or 10 or $15 per input token versus 50 million output tokens, get it to think, don't get it to build. So that's what I started to do. Fable came back. It was just my thinker. This is what I have in my brain. This is what I want to do. This is my problem. What can we do? And it was just a blessing in disguise that GPT 5.6 had come out because it is an excellent model. As I say, it is my daily driver, and I rely. If one had to go, I'd rather Fable go than GPT 5.6 because value for money wise and what you're able to do with that app, with that model, is incredible. And so that's how I would work it. I have a $200 Claude plan, a $200 Codex plan. Yes, that's a lot of money, but it's 6 to 7 days a week. It's my whole company. It is the backbone, the spine of my company. And also, that's the other thing, right? At the moment, the $200 Claude plan, you get the equivalent of $8,000 in APIs. And with Codex, you get up to $14,000 equivalent API usage. So that's massive subsidy. So a lot of people saying the token subsidy era is over. I think it was coming. Everyone was going to go, oh, these prices are going up. But then thanks to the likes of Grok 4.5, Muse Spark from Meta, Kimi K3, at like a tenth of the price, that all of a sudden Anthropic specifically and OpenAI, they've been giving us a lot. I get regular resets on my OpenAI on Codex, which is great. I'll just go in, I'm halfway through my usage, and it gets reset back to zero. Much appreciated. So yeah, Claude, Fable, Thinking Brain, GPT 5.6, Builder. That being said, another trick I've learned is don't just take it as gospel. Get them to question each other. I take the spec that I get from Fable, I give it to GPT 5.6, and I ask it, what do you think of this? This came from the orchestrator. You're the builder. What do you think? Don't just say yes. If you disagree, say so. And 9 out of 10 times, it comes back with something going, pretty good plan, but I would maybe change this, or this. Then give that back to Fable. And again, 9 out of 10 times, Fable will go, that's a really good way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about that. Yes, let's do this, this, and that. And maybe I don't agree with that. Let's do this. Give it back to the builder. Now, I know that might seem a bit redundant, but remember, doing that in the beginning saves you so much time later on. And this is one of the expensive lessons I learned as a non-coder, where I would just kind of, let's try this. Okay, then let's try this. Let's try this. There's a plan for a reason, right? There's structure to it. And the quicker you learn that structure, the easier it'll be for you. And I found for me, let the robots do that structure and working. Just make sure you connect the dots. Okay, ask him. Happy, go. And even when they give output, at each output, I will get Fable to have a look. So it's just input tokens, not as expensive. Yeah, good idea, keep going. Oh, no, tweak that. And off it goes. And then sometimes I'll find myself, I know enough now. I was like, okay, I know what we're doing here. This is just sort of building and testing. I don't need to ask Fable this. Let's keep going. Let's keep going with GPT 5.6. And then we do a chunk of work, save it, push it to the repo, or before that, get Fable to review the code. What do you think? And then go. And that system's made a huge difference. It really has. I find my efficiency, my learning, I'm slowing it down. I'm able to pick up little pointers. I recently had GPT make me an effective idiot's guide to being an orchestrator operating AIs. It wrote me this beautiful 200-page book using my company, my files, my experience to make me a personalized book on what's actually happening in the background when they're working, how to think of GitHubs and Gits and repos and JSON files and where they fit in and dependencies and all these words that were so new to me. I see them pop up and was able to connect the dots. So that's something we'll go into later about how you use these machines. But you can see, if you can think about it, they can make it up. Okay, so what about you folks out there that just use one model, ChatGPT? That's the big one, right? It's the biggest consumer model out there. I'd say fine, no problem with it. I've heard some numbers recently that how many people are just using it as therapists and to check the weather. Totally cool, but you're missing a bit of a beat here. And the point I'm also trying to make is you don't have to go and spend $400 like I do. You could spend nothing, or $20 if you want to up the game a little bit. And when I say spend nothing, you can go to Grok 4.5, Meta Muse Spark, ChatGPT, Claude Chat, and just use their free plans. But use Claude for something, use GPT for something. Say, okay, you're my builder, you're my orchestrator. Let's do this project and see how, okay, now you seem more logical, you seem more flamboyant. Let's go with that. The example I use is the two robots in Interstellar, Tars and Chase. Charles and Chase. Tars is the chatty one, bit cool, a bit not quirky. He's a bit charming. Case is just get on with it. Fable is Tars. Fable has got some banter, but he's very confident, very capable. And just like Case, GPT 5.6, very capable, and just gets on with it. I kind of like Case a lot. So for yourself, if I had to give a recommendation, I would actually say go and get a $20 Cursor plan. Now, Cursor, if you haven't used it before, they've actually just got bought by SpaceX. Elon just went and bought it. Their model, their Composer 2.5 model, is brilliant as a coding model. You still talk to it like a ChatGPT there. The Cursor app, it'll remind you of ChatGPT. You've got the little Composer window where you sit and you talk and you type it out. But when I say a coding model like Claude Code or Codex, The only difference between that and, for example, ChatGPT is just, it's a generalized model. It's not looking at your computer. It's just going off its own database. Whereas where you use those coding models, they work in projects or a folder. So I have my company called Helmwise folder. And in there, I've got a folder called products. And in products, the Handover app. So whenever I'm doing work in Handover app, I start my conversation in the Handover app. And then Claude Code or Codex knows, right, we are now working on Handover. Boom, boom, boom. And it does everything it needs to do. So that's only the real difference. The actual interface looks the same. Once you know where to start the conversations in the right place and just refresh that, always know, okay, what am I working on? Goes back to the steps, remember. What am I working on? Take that extra second. Okay, I'm working on this. Let me start in there. And then it's much easier from there. And you just talk. And so going back to Cursor, great value. And now that they've got the investment of SpaceX, they're on SpaceX's computing, extremely fast hardware, really fast. And so I'm really excited for when Cursor 3.0 comes out, which I don't think will be too long. That $20 plan gives you such value. So if you want little hobby projects to start building things and this is not just about building apps, right? This is putting ideas to it. There's just anything you can think of, you can put to these models. The good thing with the coding models is that it can remember better. It builds a project, so to speak. So you can then ask the free models the questions. Go to Claude, go to 4.8, GPT 5.6 on ChatGPT, and then use Cursor as the builder, or vice versa. Point being, just try more than one. Get a feel for it. See what happens. And so for the weekly question, am I out of a job yet? Well, it's an interesting one. There was that rhetoric about AI taking all the jobs, as I spoke about in my previous episode. It wasn't as clear-cut as that. In fact, some more studies are coming out now where more jobs are being created, right? Because AI is empowering us to do more. Jobs are going to change. Certain jobs will disappear, but new ones are forming it. And I think I'm the perfect example. I worked for 25 years on private yachts. Since I was 18 years old, that has been my life. I've always had interest in technology and design and starting businesses, for sure. And that's where AI steps in. I'm now equivalent of a 6-person company. When I look at what I'm doing on an average day, from marketing, editing videos, to researching for my products, building websites, building apps, responding to emails, general day-to-day admin, my productivity is off the charts. Am I working harder than I've ever worked? Without question. I'm sitting here at 10 o'clock at night recording this because it's the only time I get to do it. But I'm loving it. It is so rewarding. So I kind of have to give the robots a point for that one, because without them, I wouldn't be here. But then I'm going to give humans a point. The ability to, again, using myself as an example, not be restricted by the fact that I can't code, but I have an imagination. I have a logical brain. I have the ability to be observant, to take a step back and see the bigger picture. And even when I don't, it's taught me to worry less about what people think, which sounds strange, I know, because the irony, I'm not talking to a person. But because they are the hardest working, most intelligent, most patient beings or machines or whatever you want to call it, you'll ever encounter, it's quite a unique experience because there aren't any stupid questions. They will just answer whatever you ask them. So if you're not sure, you just ask. And that fills you with confidence. And you find the learning curve, it's steep, but it's enjoyable. So yeah, 1-1. It's a draw. We go again. That's all we've got time for this week. I'm Charles. I am not a coder, but I'm building anyway. And this has been Charles vs. the Machines. See you next time.
Charles versus
the machines.